Hello.
All right, perfect. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Perfect. So hey everybody, and welcome to the first track for today, which is First Contact. And I'm going to be your FASI for today. My name is Shameen Fatma, and currently I'm the MCVP for PD and PR for ISIC in Pakistan. Today we're just going to be generally going through how to approach the company for the first time, how to establish the first contact with them, what sort of methods you're going to be using, what sort of approaches you can have, etc., etc. So before we start officially, I'm telling you about what the first contacts are. Can you guys quickly tell me which ways of first contacting a company do you usually use? So how do you first approach a company? Just type it in the chat box. If you want to unmute yourself and say it, that's completely fine as well.
LinkedIn.
Okay, so there's LinkedIn. What else? Okay, LinkedIn again. Email. What else? Okay, email, Telegram if it's an alumni. All right. What else do you guys use other than LinkedIn, email, Telegram? Phone calls. Okay, perfect. What else? Okay, so I think everybody agrees that normally we, all right, referrals by alumni, that's a good one. So normally what we do is we go through emails, we go through LinkedIn's, we do cold calls, we reach out through referrals, we reach out through Telegram, etc., etc. The first method that we're going to be talking about today is the first email. So the first email you send the company is basically your first touch point with that company, whichever that company is, if it's an actual prospect, if it's just a company that you've heard of, etc., etc. So the first thing we're going to discuss is what your first email should look like. So generally, a quick question, what should we include in a first email and what is important? So for those of you who send out emails as the first contact, what do you guys write in your emails? What's the thing that you include in it? Just type it in the chat box. If you guys want to unmute yourself, that's completely fine as well. So what do you guys write in your first email? All right, so Jika says, introduction of what ISIC is, what's my position and what we're interested in pursuing. All right, how I got the contact info, what I'm writing, and my purpose. What else? All right, you end it with a schedule for a call. Perfect. Anything else you guys want to add? Anything that you include? Okay, majorly an introduction with an intent to schedule a meeting. Okay. All right. So generally, what we do for the first email and what's important is 4 to 5 different steps. So number one is your subject line. So that is basically going to be the tone of your email. That's going to basically set the scene for what your email is going to look like. Then you're going to have a very strong opening line. Then comes the body copy of your email, which is going to give them the details, then a call to action and a professional signature. So this is generally how the structure for an email works. You can add things to it. You can generally, these are the things that are important to include in an email. Other than this, you can obviously add more detail, whichever you think the company might be interested in, etc., etc. However, how you're going to structure it. So the first subject line, keep it short and enticing. So if you're going to write a very huge subject line, they're not going to be interested. If you write a very long subject line, which has a lot of different confusing words, they're not going to be interested. They're not going to even open the email. The number one step is to keep it short and enticing. Number two, don't use spammy words. So a lot of times, how many times has it happened to you guys that you receive an email that says this percent discount or tempting offer or we're selling this or donate to this? And how many times have you guys ignored it? Do you open those emails or do you like, okay, this is not important, or you just directly put them in the trash box? How many times has that happened to you guys? every single day. Never open them. All right, same. I don't open those emails either. What about everybody else? Do you guys open those emails? Never. All right. No. So that tells you pretty much everything about your subject line. So if you're going to use spammy words like unique offer or 50% discount on this or solutions to this or we're selling this, right? So you're not going to open that email. So your subject line is what makes your consumer or your client or whatever company that you're proposing to basically be interested in what you're saying. So your subject line needs to be very enticing, very like it needs to capture the attention of your partner. So keep it short, don't use spammy words. And what are examples of good subject lines? So let's say ideas for let's say there's a company that is hiring at the moment. So you're going to send them an email that's going to be ideas for recruiting your next batch or, ideas for new recruits. Then questions about something that they've had a problem with. So let's say a company has recently had a lot of issues with digital marketing. So you can ask them, you can, write about questions about digital marketing or questions about something specific that has happened to them. Then questions about a specific goal they have. Have you considered, something that's going to capture their attention? So a problem that they're struggling with, maybe a thought that they've had recently, a project that they're working on. So you use a subject line that is going to capture their attention. So let's say you have a common connection with them. So there's a company and there's an alumni referral. So you're going to write the name of the alumni and you'll be like, this person recommended me to get in touch with you. That could be a good subject line. The same way, you can test different subject lines and then check which one has a higher opening rate. So you can check all of these subject lines. If you have more ideas, you can check those. You can decide what subject line works for your specific case. So do you guys have any questions about subject lines and how you guys are supposed to make them? Exactly. Like Sumi says, if somebody wrote to you an email with the subject called questions about Global Leadership Day, you would open it right away because A, it doesn't look spammy, and number two, it's directly relevant to you. The same way if somebody says ideas for youth leadership or ideas for volunteering, so then obviously I'd open the email because that's directly relevant to me. The same way when you write a subject line, it has to be relevant to whichever company you're approaching, and it shouldn't look spammy because then they're not going to open it. The second part, however, comes on the opening line. So don't start with, a lot of times what we do is we start with, hi, my name is this, and I work at this, and that's not a good beginning. The reason why that is because number 8, they're not really interested in an introduction unless they know they're going to get something out of it, unless they know that obviously this is going to lead somewhere. So your introduction shouldn't directly be at the beginning. What HubSpot sales representatives recommend is, let's say you have a mutual connection. So if an alumni has referred that company to you, what you can do is you can write, all right, so let's say Sumi recommends the company. So I'll be like, Sumedha, then you recommended or mention your company and that you're having this problem or you're working on this, and I would like to have a conversation about this. So mentioning a common contact is a lot more attractive, it's a lot more reliable, and it's a lot more effective than just directly introducing yourself. The same way, if you have a common ground, you can say that I saw that we both have this thing in common. Or so if they're working on, let's say, leadership, you can write that I saw that we both were working on this specific project, or we're both working on leadership. The same way, you can congratulate them on something instead of directly introducing. If they've been promoted to a different position or if they've started working a new job, you can start with congratulations on this, congratulations on a successful project, or etc., etc. That's definitely going to be a lot more effective for the partner to look at, for them to be attracted to. The next, again, I noticed you is a very good opening line in terms of how you're going to approach them. Let's say you look at somebody and they released an annual report. So you can talk about, I noticed that you released this annual report and I would love to sit down and discuss this part of it. So that's something that can be a very good opening line. Right after the opening line comes the body of the email. So what do you generally write in the body of the email? Can you guys just type it in the chat and let me know? What do you include right after the opening line right after the subject line, what do you write in your body email? So do you tell them about ISEC? Do you tell them about your project? Do you tell them about what you are doing? Do you tell them about your job? What is it? What do you write? All right. So your name, the position that you're working on, what you do. All right. Perfect. What else do you write? Somebody mentioned ISEC values. They write about that. All right. So generally what we do is, so the first thing you want to do with a partner, once you've established that you want to talk to them, that you have a similar connection or a similar ground, is to make them understand that there's shared value in talking to you, right? So whichever company it is, whichever prospect it is, you need to make them realize and make them understand that this is as valuable to them as it is to you. So the first thing you do in the body of an email is convey value by connecting your business to your prospect. So you align their vision. So if somebody works on, let's say, again, the same example, if somebody works on leadership, ISEC as an organization works on leadership. So you highlight that point and you tell them that this is a shared value that you guys have. The second thing is obviously avoiding generic value propositions. Something that I personally like doing is not directly pitching to them in the email. I would want to have a conversation with them. I would want to get to know them before I pitch them something or I give them a value proposition. So avoid doing that. Ask questions that align the research you've conducted with your prospects. So ask them questions about things that you know about them. So if a company has recently invested in, let's say, a lot of volunteering opportunities, or if a company has released their new CSR budget, so you're going to ask them about that. Ask them about things that you found out about them and you want to know about them. Then let's say, how, if at all, would you like to improve your strategy is a question. So if they're working on releasing new, like maybe having a new service or maybe doing a new project, ask them about their strategy, ask them about what they're doing. Ask them what their priorities are. Ask them like if they have any questions about things, like for instance, if they're working on reports at the moment, or if they're working on engaging the youth, ask them if they have unanswered questions about it, if they have questions that you can help answer them. Then ask them if they like, so a question would be, would it be nice or does it have to happen? Considering that if they're working on a new project, you ask them about whether or not that's something they would want to work on with you, if it's something that they want to invest in at the moment. So the body of your email is generally supposed to give them context of why you want to talk to them. So you can ask them questions, you can give them suggestions, you can ask them if they would want to discuss a specific thing. You align your value with what their business wants, what you can provide to them as ISEC, what you can provide to them as an organization, and just make sure that they're very hooked on what they want out of it. The same way, the closing of the email, a lot of you were very, very right. There needs to be a clear call to action. So it can be, the call to action can be a meeting, it can be them sending you their company profile, you sending them a proposal, it can be anything. So a clear call to action that is measurable and specific. So it shouldn't be something like we should meet up sometime or we should have a meeting sometime. Ask them directly if they want to have a meeting at this specific time or if at this specific day. A few examples, like, do you have 10 minutes to catch up tomorrow? So this is very specific because it's not only talking about the day, it's also talking about how much time you need. So 10 minutes tomorrow. So it's very specific on how you want the call to action to be. Does it make sense for us to talk? If not, who is the best person for me to talk to? So something that you can do with companies that you're not sure if you're talking to the right person, you can ask them if they're the direct touch points for that company or if they can direct you to somebody else. The same way, let's say, are you available for a 30-minute call on a date and time? So make it very specific so that they can get back to you about it. And at the very last, keep your signature short, simple, and professional. Don't add. So a lot of times I've seen outside of ISEC, when a company approaches me or a company approaches anyone, I've seen emails where they add GIFs to it, where they add images to it, where they add cartoons and weird informal things to it. That's generally, it can work with some companies, but it doesn't always work. So a few things: you should always include your phone number, your LinkedIn profile, and avoid images or quotes. So don't write quotes that are not relevant. Don't write. So a lot of times I've seen people including very sappy Tumblrish quotes on their email signature, and it never works. It gives off a very unprofessional and informal image. So whenever you're approaching a company on behalf of your role as MCVPs or your role as PD managers, always include your phone number, your LinkedIn profile, and make it very, very simple and professional. So this is an example of an email. I would want you guys to quickly go through this example and tell me if you guys understand how this works. Do you guys understand the subject line, the opening line, the body of the email, and the signature? Does this make sense to you guys? So just type it in the chat box once you're done reading it. If it makes sense, say yes. If it doesn't, say no, and I'll explain. So does everybody understand how this email works, the template that we've discussed? Perfect. All right, so you guys now know that how the subject line is going to be, how the opening is going to be, how the body of the email is going to look, and the call to action. For instance, this person has a very specific call to action that you have 5 minutes to speak on Wednesday or Thursday afternoon, right? So this way, whoever the company is, they can directly tell you if they're available on that day. So this is how you write a call to action. Then when is the best time to send emails? So like this says, HubSpot study tested over 10 months and 20 million emails. And they basically analyzed that the best time to send emails is at the beginning of the week. So Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. The more you get closer to the weekend, the less people are likely to open that email. The more it's going to be at the fresh start of the week, the more people are going to open that email. So a good time to send emails is Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And when is the best time to send it? Generally, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. is a very, very good time to send emails because that's when people generally get into the office. They open their emails, they check their system for the day. And the optimum time, as done by HubSpot study, is 11 a.m. So if you send an email, there's a very good feature on Gmail, Yahoo, etc., all email services where you can schedule an email. So even if you write the email the previous night, you can schedule it to send at like 8 in the morning or 9 in the morning or 10 in the morning, and it'll send for you if you're not going to wake up on time and send it. So just schedule the email, and it's very likely that they'll open it between 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. So that's a very, very good time to send it. And now what we're going to do is we're going to split you into breakout rooms. So he's going to help me split you guys into breakouts, and what we're going to do is
can you give me hosting rights?
All right, just a second. So what let me just explain and then I'll give you the hosting rights.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're going to go into groups and you're going to show each other your sales email. So what the most recent email you guys have sent, just show it to each other and take feedback. And then write the feedback, and then we're going to have a small sharing space where we're going to talk about what you guys have done nicely in your sales emails, what you guys can improve on, etc. So let me just give, okay. Yes, all right. So we have time for one small sharing. If somebody would like to tell me what they discussed on what sort of feedback they got on their sales email. Anyone? You can just simply unmute yourself and you guys can tell me.
I'm Tara. I want to share.
Yeah.
Okay, actually
yes,
from my group, I really got a lot of insight how to use and send a body email, and how can I can create the body email and the subject more engaging to the targeted partners, because we already show our current current emails and how we send it to our partners. And there are lots of things that we have to fix it, and there are lots of things that we have to revise. So I want to say thank you for my group.
Perfect. All right, so that's the only time we have for one sharing. We're going to take more sharings at the end. The next part we're going to be discussing today is, for the first contact, is contacting through LinkedIn. So a lot of you said that you contact companies through LinkedIn. My question is, how do you contact them through LinkedIn? So what sort of message do you guys give? So you can either type it in the chat box or you can unmute yourself and tell me. Okay, it can be very small, whatever you guys say through your LinkedIn approach. What is it? Okay, would somebody like to share?
I can share, I guess. So I have a few different cases, and one of them is usually, and sometimes it's usually the one that works really well because it's not directly salesy. It's something that they post on their LinkedIn profile or something like that. So maybe they shared a blog or they wrote a blog on something and it's related to future of jobs or something, or like creating or talent management in entry level graduates or something like that. And then I related to that conversation, like it really interested me in what I'm doing at ISEC as well, and then it kind of gives me a way into the conversation.
Perfect. So generally, everybody has a very different approach to how they're going to talk to the person through LinkedIn. We're going to be talking about generally a very specific approach to how you can speak to somebody through LinkedIn. So the first thing is people who have a common ground with you, people you share a common value with, people you share a similar vision with, are always going to be more receptive. They're always going to be more attractive to what you have to say. So the first thing I would suggest whenever you approach somebody through LinkedIn is to find a common ground. That common ground can be about anything. So go through their profile, see if they're interested in something that you're interested in, find what is common between you and yourself or common between their organization and ISEC. And generally just find something that you can talk about that's a common value, common a vision statement, or anything that you think is a common ground for you to begin from is a very good way to start it. Then find out about the person's job role, work history, and educational background and interest. So doing a bit of background research on the person is very important to understand what that person does, what they're interested in, what their history is, etc., etc. The next thing is to read what they're sharing and interested in. So when you're finding a common ground, it's always important to not only know the person, but also know the organization that they're working in. So it's very easy for you to initiate conversation when you actually do talk to them. Then the next part, like somebody mentioned that they go through alumni referrals, they go through common connections. So see if you have a mutual connection that can introduce you. That is always a very, very good conversation starter. So asking one of your shared connections to introduce you, or introducing yourself and telling them that, you saw that you were, so an example here is that you talk to them and you say, I noticed you and I both are connected to, let's say, Sumeda, and I thought I would reach out and connect with you as well. So a mutual connection is a very good way to start a conversation. Then keep it short. LinkedIn messages already have a limit to how much you can write. So make sure that your message is not short, but it's also very captivating for them. LinkedIn message is more like instant messaging. Don't write a whole ass email. Emails are a different thing. LinkedIn is a different thing. So when you approach through LinkedIn, make it short, make it to the point, and give them a reason to reply. So something we've discussed before as well is call to actions. So, having a call to action in LinkedIn is also very important. Ask them a question. Could be a question about their experience, could be anything about their position, their occupation, role, etc., etc. And then keep track and follow up. So the same way you're going to send an email and have follow-ups through that, whenever you send a message on LinkedIn, also have follow-ups through that as well. So, whatever your leads are, whatever people you've contacted, make sure you follow up, make sure Yes. So yeah. So somebody asked how we can make people effectively connect back to us. So I would say the same thing that I'm reiterating, that find a common ground, find something that they would want to talk about. So it can be anything. It can be something related to their interest, something related to their organization, something that they would want to talk about with you, right? So if you mention a common interest, it's more likely that people would want to talk to you. So let's say I approach Sumedha, and Sumedha is interested in volunteer opportunities. So if I have a conversation about volunteer opportunities, she is going to talk to me. But if I go and talk about, let's say, history or history books or opportunities around that, she's not going to be interested in that conversation if that's not something that she is particularly she has any interest in. A few examples that I've included. So let's say you're approaching somebody through LinkedIn with a common connection. This is going to be the sort of template you can follow. Okay, I noticed we're both connected to this and this. I also checked out your profile and saw that you and I both have. So this is where you mentioned the similar contact. Judging from your role at the company, we might be able to help each other out. Let me know if you'd like to connect sometime and talk. So this is an approach where you are establishing that there's a mutual connection and there's also common ground. The same way, without any connections in common, you can talk about what you do have in common with them, right? So I came across your profile after you're seeing your post about this specific thing. I'm trying to learn more about your industry. Can we have a conversation? I also had a friend who worked at your company. So how do you like it there, etc., etc. So finding uh, a common ground with them is very important so that you can take that conversation forward. So, and obviously, whenever you're talking to somebody through LinkedIn, it's very important that you give them a reason to reply. So this person has, so in this template, you can say the last question they've asked is, how did you like it there? So this is a conversation they're going to respond to. They'll tell you about their experience. They'll tell you that this is how their experience went. So obviously, having a call to action is very, very important. And the last part we're going to discuss today is a discovery call. So we've done emails, we've done LinkedIn, and so maybe they are not on LinkedIn, you can't find them on LinkedIn, you can't find them on email, but you have a number that you can contact. So my question to you is, so if you're contacting somebody through a phone call, what exactly would you say, and why are discovery calls important? So then somebody tell me if they approach a company through a discovery call, what do you say and why do you think it's important? You guys can type it in the chat box, or you guys can unmute yourself and tell me. Why do you think discovery calls are important? All right, to validate if they need your product. Don't waste your time. Perfect. Perfect. Jika's right. I think the goal is to really establish the connection and have a warm relationship. What else? Why do you think you would make a discovery call to a company? To understand their pain points. Perfect. So which discovery questions do you use? So the same thing that you do in emails, you LinkedIn, what sort of questions do you use when you call them? What sort of things do you ask them? Okay, this is something we want to know, or what sort of questions you would like to know the answers to when you make a call? Anyone? You guys can just tell me one question that you ask when you make a discovery call. So I'm assuming nobody makes discovery calls, or you guys don't ask questions in your discovery calls. All right, it's completely fine if you guys don't make calls or if you guys don't ask specific questions or it's not coming to your mind. We're going to discuss them anyways. So the first thing, all right, so Ines says she's confused with the term. So discovery calls are basically when you call a company for the first time and you want to like pitch ISEC to them or pitch a partnership to them. What are you going to ask them for the first time? So this is the first cold call that you make to a company. Let's say you call a company and you want to partner with them and you've never talked to them before. What are the sort of questions you're going to ask them? All right, so Gia says, what is the impact that you want to see in employer branding initiatives? All right, that's perfect. So generally when you contact a company, the first thing you want to do is ask them about their company itself. So you want to know about the company, you want to know about the initiative, you want to know what they do. Tell me about your role. So once you know about the company, you ask them about their role. So what do they do? What is their position? What are their responsibilities? The next thing is obviously what are they responsible for? So if they, let's say somebody calls you as MCVPs for VD, they're going to ask you about ISIC, then they're going to ask you about your role, and then they're going to ask you what you are responsible for, right? Then questions that qualify. So this is asking about the company and the role is when you set the scene, right? So you know how in movies they have this thing where you're going to set the scene before actual action happens, right? They're going to tell you the backstory before you actually get to the climax and you get to the ending. So the background is basically you setting the stage for the question. Then you're going to basically continue the story forward when you're going to ask them about tell me about their goals. So like Gia says, when you ask them about employer branding initiatives, if they're working on employer branding, ask them about their goals. What sort of goals you have? What sort of thing do you want to do when it comes to branding? What sort of customer related things are you doing, etc., etc. Then what do you need to achieve these? When do you need to achieve these goals by? So when you have a timeline in mind, you would know when you can help them or how you can help them. The same way, what problems are you trying to solve? So if you guys have gone through the BD Academy before taking up your role, there was this process called the BANT process, where you ask them about what exactly are their objectives, what are their goals, what are the things that they want to do, and what sort of problems are they trying to solve. So what is something that this company is struggling with? So if a company is struggling with branding, that is a problem that they're going to solve. If they're struggling with recruitment, that's something you can help them solve. So these are the questions that are going to keep your story moving forward. Then what's the source of that problem? So if it's a branding key problem, so you're going to ask them, why do you have a branding problem? Is it because you don't have enough HR? Is it because you don't have enough content? Is it because your company is suffering from a bad reputation, etc., etc.? What is the source of that problem? Then why is it a priority today? Why do you want to work on it? So the more you understand their priorities, the more you can help engage them, and the more you can help them sort of solve that problem. Then why hasn't it been addressed before? So all of these questions are questions that are going to set the scene. And then you ask them for potential solutions and ask them if you can help out with the solution, etc. So again, outcome, what if you didn't choose a product, you ask them about their plans, you ask them about their objectives, etc., etc. The next thing you do is questions that disqualify. So you ask them, so once you've understood their problem, their objectives, you ask them what the problem is in implementing a solution, or what are the bottlenecks that they're facing, etc., etc. And then you come to the next step. So you've established context, you have established what the problem is, you've established objectives, you have established the bottlenecks. The next problem comes is how you can help them. So all of these questions that ask about your plans, you ask them about make their life better, how their organization's goals are, how do you implement the solutions, how are things going to be different if you implement the solution. That's all of that comes in the next step when you understand how this company is going to look moving forward. Then the next part is, how do you know if your call was successful? So if the both of you have a sales plan, if there's clear call to actions, if there are clear next steps on how you guys are going to proceed, that means you had a good, successful call. If things are unclear, you schedule a second call. So the same way with emails and messages, You do one email as a first contact, and then moving forward, you keep on contacting them, taking follow-ups, etc. The same thing is with calls as well. Then prioritize qualification over process-based questions. So we've talked about qualification, we've talked about how you're going to talk about goals, timelines, objectives, etc. That should always be your focus on understanding the company first before you pitch them solutions. Then either clear, so if there's a sales opportunity, if there's clear connection, that means your call was successful. If you've disqualified the prospect, then that also means that the call was successful, because now you have a clear distinction of whether or not you can partner with the company. And how exactly you are going to do your discovery calls. So we don't have a lot of time. I think we're almost to the end of the session. So we're going to do a very, very quick sharing. Instead of going into breakouts, we're going to do a quick sharing if somebody wants to share how they do their discovery calls, and then we can end the session here. So if anybody would like to volunteer and tell me about how they make their discovery calls, and how do you basically ask them the sort of questions. So anyone who wants to talk about this. I would ideally want you guys to unmute yourself instead of typing in the chat box, so we can have like a live discovery call. Guys, don't be shy. This is a very safe space for you guys to speak. It's okay. Is Gia, are you speaking? Because I think you're muted yourself.
I just have a question, like we share here, is it? Or we will in a breakout room?
No, you're going to share here. You can feel free to share here because we're towards the end of the session.
Let me think about this, because I seldom do discovery call. Usually we'll be asking the question in meeting. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. What else? Do you guys want to add anything else? Okay, can everybody tell me if they've made a discovery call in the past quarter? So in the past 2 to 3 months, have you guys made a call to a company? Yes, other than Sumedha. Who else has made calls to companies?
Guys, is everyone there? Or are you just
I feel like either
present?
everybody's asleep.
I can fill the air if that's okay.
Yeah.
For discovery calls, you mean like not just via phone call, right? Like actual video meetings, if that makes sense. In my case, I've had discovery calls wherein we really establish first what are the realities per parties. So instead of saying like, hey, we want you to be part of our event, like we want to know first like how are things going on your end, because it feels like such a hard sell if we say we want you to be part of our event. Like we want to know first like what are they working on now, like where are the possible points of collaboration. So we see first, or we gauge first what can be our common ground, and then we collaborate from there. So yeah, that's how we do it here.
Perfect. I think that's a very, very good approach. Like we talked about, that you always establish context before you approach a company, before you talk to them. Do your research, understand what they're working on, understand if there's common ground, and then have a conversation. That's generally how it's going to be a lot more effective. And that is the end of the session. I hope you guys enjoyed the session, learned something out of it, and over to Sumedha.
Thank you so much, Shami. Okay, guys, we can take 2 minutes break, and then we gather back here for our next session on sales meeting. Interesting. Okay, see you here.